Thanks, Caitlin, for taking the time. The first question is, can you just tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Caitlin Leverenz Smith. I am a mother, an athlete, a consultant. That's a new job I have. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. I started the sport of swimming at a very young age and truly fell in love. And so I had always had the goal of becoming an Olympian and finally achieved that and became an Olympic medalist in 2012 in swimming. I had a 4-year professional swimming career before retiring from swimming. After retiring from swimming, I worked for 2 years at Visa in the payments industry. Super interesting and a really great place for somebody who's kind of trying to re-find herself. I left Visa to go to business school, and I did a 2-year full-time MBA program at Stanford and graduated, I guess, a year ago now in 2021. And now I'm an internal consultant at Kaiser Permanente. And I have a 2-year-old son who his name is Logan. He was born in 2020, so he's a early pandemic baby. And motherhood has been a challenge and super fun. And so that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. That's such an amazing story. And I know you're used to juggling a lot of different priorities, but growing up, did you have a particular framework in mind for how you would approach having a family and a successful career?
The model that I had growing up was I'm one of 4 children, and I had a stay-at-home mom or a mom who did per diem hours as a nurse. And so it was very flexible. So she was around a lot, which was amazing. And so growing up, I always thought that that's what I would be. You know, I would follow in her footsteps and I would have lots of kids and want to be home with them and spend a lot of time with them. And somewhere along the way, I started seeing other working mothers, or I think started realizing that there was maybe a different option. And then also realized that I'm very, like career driven. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it, but like I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy learning. I enjoy, improving myself and kind of climbing a ladder, whether it be in my swimming career or in a professional career. And so at some point I kind of realized that there's that disjointed, or there's a mismatch between like thinking I'd always be a stay-at-home mom and then realizing that I really did want, I really wanted to have both. If that's possible, I do want it to be possible. You know, I wanted to be able to both be a mom and continue to have a career.
And now that you're kind of doing both, how do you think things have kind of played out relative to the framework?
So much harder than I thought it would be. I mean, people tell you that it's hard, but it is really hard. The lack of sleep's hard, and there's big transitions that are hard. And I have a toddler now, so there's big feelings and tantrums that are hard. Like those things are obvious. But I think what I started, like it was actually after business school when I started working, you know, traditional full-time as a consultant role at a large healthcare company. I mean, it was things like, leaving at 4:45 to go pick up my son and just feeling like a twinge of guilt that I knew I needed to be there before the 5 p.m. pickup. But like, I could have stayed on that meeting for 15 more minutes, or, it just like I needed to leave again because he got sick and I needed to go pick him up, or trying to connect with my husband to figure out who's going to play that role and how can both of us kind of balance it between each other. So trying to handle, like, sometimes he just has to be with me. And so I'm trying to, like, you can hear a voice in the background, and just it's just small things that just make it that much harder to feel like I can balance. And the hardest thing has been feeling like I'm really good at both, being a worker and being a mother. And feeling like I can be both good at both of them at the same time. I think that's been one of the kind of hardest tensions I felt.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot, and that makes a lot of sense. And when was the first time you felt the tug between family goals and career goals?
Before I even had a kid. So as I said, I kind of had this model that I would become a stay-at-home mom. I had like a fear in the back of my mind that I was gonna get an MBA, I was going to go into the world, and I was going to have a kid, and I was going to look at that kid and just decide that there's no way that I can do anything besides be with this child, and I need to kind of forego these other career aspirations that I have. Because I know people who felt that, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I think people who are called to being, full-time mothers as their careers, like that's an amazing thing. And I just had this like fear that I would be like, quote unquote, giving something up from especially getting a prestigious MBA and not using it, which is also silly, but that's just how I felt. And for better or worse, like my personality, I was about 4 months in to motherhood, and my husband went back to work, and I remember like I was about a week at that point by myself. And I mean, the newborn stage is hard. Like I'm still struggling with breastfeeding and sleeping and getting him to sleep and all of those things. But I remember thinking like, man, I am not cut out to do this day in and day out. And that's why I say, like, I respect people who are, but I always felt that like tension that like, what if I can't do both, or what if I do that other thing, if I do want to be good in school and good at my job, that, that means that I'm taking away from him, and the like slight twinges of guilt that I have, kind of at both ends.
And then what's your best advice for being ambitious, both as a mom and a career woman?
But one of the things that one of the advice that I was given by a mentor of mine who had 2 kids and was very senior at the company, she said that there's just times that like for ebbs and flows, and that tension of being really good at both, it's essentially impossible to do, but knowing that there's times that I can be really good at one, and there's times that I can be really good at the other, and that's okay. And I've felt that in other places in my life, whether it be with my marriage, there's times where my husband's really going to lean in and he's going to play a really active role, and maybe that allows me to be really focused on this big project at work, and vice versa, and just kind of leaning into those ebbs and flows, and as best as I can, letting go of the expectations or the guilt or the pressure that I put on myself to be great at all those things.
Yeah, no, I like that. What is one change you would like to see in the world with regard to working moms?
One thing I think that's really impactful for me is actually when there are coworkers and fathers who talk about their lives outside of the working space. But I really appreciate when, I have a coworker who's a dad who says, I'm going to go pick up my son at 4:00 for some lessons. Like there's like a little bit of me that like breathes a sigh of relief that like somebody else does that too. Or even somebody who doesn't have kids, but who's talking about like, I'm going to go to a dentist today, or I got to take care of my parents, or something else that's like outside of that working world. Like gives me just a slight bit of freedom to be able to say like, yes, I can, it's okay for me to have to go take care of a son who's sick, or have to go bring whatever to daycare, or whatever, or whatever that small thing may be that feels like I'm getting pulled away from my work. I think the more that people talk about it and normalize that we are workers and we are like whole beings when you come to your workplace. You're not just one thing, and I can't just like turn my brain off and be really good at making decks or going through Excel. Like I bring everything to the table, and so and everybody else is too, right? And so the more that I think we can normalize and talk about that, I think the better it will be for parents and particularly for mothers. And the other thing, for working moms I'd love to see is just the norm that fathers take paternity leave the same as mothers. It's so simple and seems so obvious. And we've even felt it just, in the tension between my husband and I. He's like, well, I can go back to work. He doesn't physically have a child attached to him trying to feed off of him. And yet like both of us being like, no, actually, I know you can go back to work. But being intentional about taking that time so that there's like equal space held, and maybe being able to do something about closing that pay gap between, a working mother and a working father.
Yeah, that one's been a big one. I think in Norway, they proved that was the biggest indicator for the pay gap that's happening. What's one thing you wish you had known earlier on, or maybe just a surprise that you discovered?
Actually, one surprise that I did have is that Parenthood like forces your hand with priorities. So, before I think, I could be the first one in the office and last one in the office, and I could be kind of thinking about my work even when I wasn't there, or like prepping for the next thing. And Parenthood truly, it puts everything in perspective, which I think is actually a beautiful thing. All of a sudden it's like when I'm home, and I'm with Logan, and I'm trying as best as I can. I'm not always very good at it, but trying to be playing with the cars or the blocks or biking outside, just trying to like be present doing that. And, when he's at daycare, then I can be fully present as best as I can, trying to do that at work. And, but where I think before, for me, the boundaries got blurred. Like, I think if I were to work from home, I work from home all the time. I think if I were to work from home before having kids, I probably would just work all the time. And one benefit is that it's like my priorities are so streamlined that it's like, no, I work between these hours. I sometimes work and he goes to bed, but regardless, I have these times in the morning that I'm with him and the evening that I'm with him. And, and I protect those times. And so the kind of prioritization that I think motherhood forces you, I think can be a really good thing as well.
Yeah, we have a separate track with hiring managers, and I think that's what most people say is moms are some of the best workers because power multitaskers, right?
Yeah, I joke all the time with my manager, I think I'm so efficient between the hours of 9 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. I grind through a lot during those hours. I know that I have to.